Years ago, a lot of mob bosses would claim sickness in order to avoid prosecution. We've seen it with Chin Gigante, the Genovese boss, who for decades played the crazy act, which in itself was an impressive feat to carry out. However, prior to Chin's time, Joe Bonanno held the title of the Master of Deception and carried it out for decades. Back on November 14, 1957, when the state police disrupted the infamous Appalachian meeting, Joe Bonanno, who was in attendance, was found hiding in a muddy cornfield near Joe Barbera's house. He was eventually indicted for conspiracy and obstructing justice, but won several delays after claiming he suffered his second heart attack, and that case was dismissed. In 1963, during Joe Valachi's testimony before a Senate subcommittee, he named Bonanno as one of the bosses of the five families. In 1964, Bonanno fled to Montreal, but was detained for lying on his immigration card application. He was placed in prison, but complained of his heart and blood pressure problems, and was placed in the prison's infirmary until he was forced to leave Canada. On October 21, 1964, a day before he was to testify before a federal grand jury, and after having dinner with his lawyer, Bonanno disappeared outside of his lawyer's Park Avenue apartment building in New York. Apparently, he was kidnapped. According to Bonanno, in his autobiography, A Man of Honor, he claimed his cousin, Stefano Magaddino, the boss of Buffalo, sent men to kidnap him. According to his lawyer, a few 6-foot-tall men grabbed Bonanno and told him, "Joe, come with us, the boss wants to see you," and hustled him into a waiting car. Weeks later, he reappeared and said his kidnappers released him. Obviously, this was something Bonanno schemed up to avoid the grand jury. If anyone had any issues with Bonanno, they wouldn't have kidnapped him. Instead, he would have been left in the street on Park Avenue. On May 17, 1966, Bonanno surrendered to face the obstruction of justice charges for failing to appear before a federal grand jury. That case was indefinitely postponed due to Bonanno's health conditions. Allegedly, by 1968, Bonanno had officially stepped down as boss of the family. He was arrested again in 1969 by the FBI in Tucson, Arizona, and had to be arraigned in bed because he said he was too ill to go to court. In 1979, a federal strike force subpoenaed Bonanno to a grand jury in San Francisco, but he claimed his health was poor and was excused. In January 1981, a U.S. District Court judge sentenced Bonanno to 5 years in prison. It would be his first conviction in his lifetime. This came as a result of wiretaps, as well as the Arizona Narcotics Strike Force collecting and going through Bonanno's garbage, which they collected outside of his house at 255 Sierra Vista Drive. At the time, the judge asked if he had anything to say. Bonanno answered, "On account of my health, I have nothing to say. Mr. Krieger is speaking for me. Let it go at that." He was referring to his attorney, Albert Krieger, who also at one time defended John Gotti. At the sentencing hearing, Bonanno complained of not feeling well and even had a family doctor testify who said to continue would threaten Bonanno's life. Bonanno's sentence was reduced to a year, which he served 8 months of in the hospital ward at Terminal Island Federal Prison. In an unprecedented move by a boss, in 1983, Joe Bonanno released his memoirs. One person most interested in the book was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Rudolph Giuliani. In the book, Bonanno describes meetings with the bosses of the 4 other families and the creation of a national ruling body called the Commission. After reading the book, Giuliani received approval to create a case where he would use racketeering laws to indict the entire commission. In essence, the commission case came to be as a result of Bonanno's book. Additionally, in April of 1983, Bonanno agreed to be interviewed by Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes. He started the interview off by stating, "I was a man of honor, and I believe with a sense of integrity, I was the most respected man in New York and all over the country." While preparing his case, in September of 1985, Giuliani subpoenaed Bonanno and wanted a videotaped disposition where he would question him about his autobiography. At the time, Bonanno was in his late 70s and insisted he suffered from high blood pressure and hardening of the arteries. Nevertheless, Giuliani still pushed forward with the subpoena, and the judge ordered a hearing to be held in Tucson, Arizona, regarding Bonanno's health. The judge, the prosecutors, and the defense team all traveled to Arizona for the hearing, which was held at a hospital Bonanno was in, St. Mary's Hospital. Bonanno's doctors testified that to obey the subpoena would be a danger to Bonanno's health, but the judge ordered him to give the disposition. When Giuliani tried asking Bonanno when he became the head of a family, Bonanno responded, "I'm too sick to answer the question. I obey my doctors because they care for my life." His answer didn't stop Giuliani. In 1933, did you become a member of the Commission or La Cosa Nostra? Bonanno again repeated, "My doctors instructed me and recommended me not to testify because the extreme stress could be fatal." Giuliani produced a copy of his book. The judge asked him, "Mr. Bonanno, is this a copy of your book?" But Bonanno replied, "I believe in God and I believe in my doctors." He then asked his doctors for medication. Giuliani would say about Bonanno, "We had a doctor examine him, and it was a bunch of bull. He was as healthy as a horse." And he further added that Bonanno was full of himself, yet incredibly intelligent. The assistant U.S. attorney, Michael Chertoff, told the judge in his autobiography called A Man of Honor, Mr. Bonanno noted that mafia members adhered to a code of silence, omerta, and that Bonanno was concerned about what people in New York would think about him if he testified. His lawyer at this hearing was William Kunstler, and he told the judge that Bonanno would refuse to testify because the stress could jeopardize his life. The judge threatened to hold Kunstler in contempt and added, "What is before me appears to be the most recent succession of efforts to delay taking this disposition." The government, Giuliani and company, knew Bonanno would refuse to testify, even if it meant being put in prison. They did it more for the media circus that surrounded the hearing. In September 1985, Giuliani questioned Bonanno's daughter-in-law, Rosalie Bonanno, the daughter of Joe Profaci. He tried getting Rosalie Bonanno to admit her father-in-law had a history of claiming illness whenever he was forced to give testimony or was arrested. Naturally, she denied this. After reciting a list spanning decades of Bonanno's alleged sickness, he asked her, "So it's fair to say that your father-in-law had at least a 26-year-long history of claiming to have serious health problems, having doctors testify that he's in serious jeopardy, but somehow we're 26 years later, and the last time you saw him, he was still alive, wasn't he?" She responded yes. I'd like to quickly mention the super thanks icon found beneath the video for anyone who'd like to support this podcast, and I thank all who use it. As predicted, Bonanno refused to comply with the judge's order and was found guilty of contempt. After the hearing, he was wheeled out in a wheelchair and taken to the MCC in Tucson. He would serve 14 months in the medical center in Springfield, Missouri. A month following his release, he was indicted again, this time for criminal contempt. In 1987, those charges were dropped after a geriatric psychiatrist diagnosed Bonanno with early dementia, which compromised his decision-making. Joe Bonanno entered the United States at the age of 17. 9 years later, he had his own crime family. He was one of the original bosses at the commencement of the American Mafia, the creation of the 5 families, one being the Bonanno family, as well as the commission which he sat on. On May 11, 2002, unlike his fellow bosses, some who were killed or sent to prison where they died, Joe Bonanno, at the ripe age of 97, died of heart failure in Tucson, Arizona. Here is what he believed in.
And when you have a faith in yourself and trust in God, you don't have to worry.